They weren't supposed to be car celebrities. They weren't polished. They weren't scripted. But that was the magic. David Freiburger and Mike Finnegan were the misfit duo who made chaos cool. They didn't build million-dollar show cars. They revived junk, clapped-out Camaros, rattle-can Ram Chargers, rust buckets with blown motors and no brakes. Fans loved every second of it. Roadkill wasn't just a show. It was a revolution. When the first episodes dropped in 2011, no one expected the wildfire that followed. It was raw, unfiltered, and utterly relatable.
And we're shooting a road trip episode driving from California to Alabama, and it's going to appear in two parts. Part one on Finnegan's Garage on his channel.
Two guys breaking down on highways, improvising repairs with duct tape and optimism. Finnegan, the high-energy wrench wizard. Freiburger, the encyclopedic hot rod philosopher. Their chemistry, untouchable. Together, they redefined what car content could be. Fun, authentic, a little insane, and always real. Viewers didn't tune in for perfection. They tuned in for personality, for brotherhood, for the thrill of watching two gearheads do the impossible with next to nothing. But lately, something's different. Fewer joint episodes, longer gaps between content, guest hosts stepping in, side projects growing larger than the main stage. It's subtle, quiet even, but to longtime fans, it's unmistakable. And then came the silence. No dramatic fallout, no final episode together, just absence. A slow drift into solo content, separate appearances, and nostalgic reposts of what once was. Fans have started asking questions, the kind of questions that cut deeper than just, where's the next episode? What happened to Finnegan and Freiburger? Is there a rift? A quiet falling out? Or is it simply the natural end of something legendary? In the world of car culture, few partnerships ever felt as genuine, which is why the silence feels so loud, and why the story we're about to tell might surprise even the most loyal Roadkill fan. To understand what we lost, we have to go back to what we had. When Roadkill first launched in 2011, it felt like lightning in a bottle. No Hollywood polish, no forced drama, just two guys, a beat-up car, and a deadline they rarely met. The formula was simple and perfect. David Freiburger, the longtime editor of Hot Rod magazine, brought deep knowledge and a nostalgic reverence for muscle cars, rat rods, and automotive history. He was the anchor, serious, methodical, often exasperated, but always focused. Mike Finnegan, on the other hand, was the wild card, laid back, fast-talking, and fearless behind the wheel. If there was a jump, a burnout, or a sketchy idea, you could bet it was Finnegan's fault, and fans loved him for it. Together, they were the soul of Roadkill. Their chemistry was undeniable. They didn't always agree. They didn't always succeed. But they always entertained. The Rotson, General Mayhem, the Muscle Truck, Stubby Bob, these weren't just builds. They were characters in a story. And we followed every chapter like it was gospel. It was the car show for the rest of us. For the DIY guys working with what they had. For the gearheads who knew that real wrenching was messy, frustrating, and full of unexpected victories. For people who valued fun over flawless. And most importantly, Roadkill was a friendship in motion. You could feel it in the high fives, the shared jokes, the quiet moments between repairs. It was real, not a gimmick, not scripted. Two friends building trash into treasure and laughing the whole way through. So when that energy began to fade, fans felt it immediately. For years, Roadkill was unstoppable. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. The first signs were small. Finnegan missed an episode, then two. Guest hosts appeared. The intros became less about us and more about who's filling in. Meanwhile, fans noticed that Freiburger was showing up more on Roadkill Garage, while Finnegan leaned into his own projects, Finnegan's Garage on YouTube and the Kibbe and Finnegan Show podcast. At first, it seemed like the natural result of success. After all, they'd become household names in car culture. It made sense that each would expand. But the tone of the main show began to shift. The laughter was still there, but it felt more restrained. The rhythm was off. Episodes became less frequent. The production quality went up, but the soul, the chaos, the unpredictability, the camaraderie felt quieter. And fans took notice. Comment sections started filling with questions. Where's Finnegan? Why isn't he in this one? Is everything okay with the guys? Neither of them addressed it directly, but the screen time spoke volumes. Freiburger carried on, professional, reliable, ever enthusiastic. Finnegan, meanwhile, built drag boats, shared long-form content, and posted updates from Georgia, hundreds of miles from the California-based Roadkill crew. They weren't just missing from the same screen, they were slowly becoming part of different shows. And the unspoken question kept growing louder. Was this just scheduling? Or something deeper? To the casual viewer, Roadkill looked like the dream job. Build wild cars, drive across the country, break things, fix them, and repeat. But behind the scenes, the pressures were very real. By the time Roadkill became a full Motor Trend property, expectations had shifted. What once was a few guys filming a chaotic road trip turned into a full-blown media franchise. The deadlines were tighter, the episodes more structured. The spontaneity, while still present, was now on a schedule. For Freiburger, this wasn't entirely new. He'd been living in the world of print deadlines, media commitments, and content calendars for decades. He adapted. But for Finnegan, who was now living in Georgia and trying to balance filming with family life, side projects, and podcasting, the grind started to take a toll. In podcast interviews, he's hinted at it, talking about the travel, the stress, the pressure to perform. He's never spoken negatively about Freiburger or the show, but his exhaustion was evident. What started as a fun escape had become a second job, and not the one he wanted. Meanwhile, Motor Trend was growing Roadkill into a brand. Spin-offs, specials, live events. Freiburger became the face of the machine, showing up on every new project while Finnegan pulled further away. There was no fight, no fallout, just a shift in priorities. But for fans who loved the show for its heart, not its horsepower, their quiet separation felt like something deeper. Like a slow-motion goodbye no one wanted to admit was happening. No one wants to admit when the dream job starts to feel like a burden. But behind the iconic episodes, behind the roadside fixes and camera smiles, the grind of Roadkill was taking its toll. And for Mike Finnegan, that toll was starting to show. He never said it outright, but listen closely to his podcast interviews, his offhand comments, the way he talks about those early filming days. It's there, the exhaustion, the mental wear, the cost of turning passion into production. Finnegan has always been a doer. Whether it was drag boats, custom builds, or podcasting, he's never stood still. But Roadkill, once a side hustle fueled by fun, had become something more structured, more demanding, less spontaneous, less them. At the height of the show's popularity, the schedule became relentless, flying back and forth from Georgia to California, filming for long hours, trying to maintain that spark while cameras rolled and deadlines loomed. For a guy with a growing family and a shop full of unfinished dreams, something had to give. And that's when his YouTube channel started to bloom. Finnegan's Garage wasn't flashy. It wasn't packed with explosions or big sponsors, but it was real, personal. He could slow down, talk to the camera, build what he wanted, when he wanted. No deadlines, no scripts, just him, his cars, and his audience. It wasn't just a shift in content, it was a shift in control. Freiburger, meanwhile, stayed the course. Motor Trend projects, Roadkill Garage, Engine Masters. He was, and still is, the engine that keeps the Roadkill machine running. But machines don't always run on friendship. And burnout has a way of creating space between even the tightest teams. There was no feud, no meltdown, no explosive episode where it all came undone. That's what made it hurt more. Instead of a farewell, we got a fade out. One week, Finnegan was there. The next, he wasn't. Then he'd pop in for an episode, then vanish again. And over time, his presence on Roadkill became the exception, not the rule. Fans noticed. They flooded comment sections. Where's Finnegan? Why are they filming without him? Is everything okay? But Motor Trend stayed silent. So did the hosts. And the speculation only grew. Some believed it was a personal fallout. Others chalked it up to scheduling. A few suspected creative control was the issue. Finnegan wanting to do things his way. Motor Trend wanting things their way. But the truth may be simpler and sadder. Two guys, two different lives. One based in Georgia, one in California. One pushing forward with a growing media brand, the other pulling back toward family, freedom, and passion projects. No anger, just absence. And that's what made it so confusing for fans. There was no closure, no final ride, no moment of reflection on what they'd built together. Just an echo. A show once built on friendship, now running on memory. In the absence of answers, fans created their own. Reddit threads stretched for miles. YouTube breakdowns analyzing their body language. Commenters speculating about drama, contracts, egos. When you build something people love, people care, sometimes too much. But what if the truth isn't scandalous? What if it's just life? In one podcast, Finnegan admitted he didn't like filming on tight timelines anymore, that the chaos, once fun, became stressful. Freiburger, in his own way, hinted at the same in interviews. The pressure to keep topping themselves, to build bigger, break more, performance. It's possible they just outgrew the same show, grew in different directions, and respected each other enough to not make a public scene of it. Maybe that's why there was no goodbye episode, no tearful final build. Because for them, Roadkill was never about endings. It was about doing what they loved, until it stopped being fun. Still, fans hope. Hope that someday the two will share a garage again. One more burnout, one more breakdown, one more moment of that unbeatable chemistry. Because while the builds were great, it was the friendship that made Roadkill unforgettable. Though they no longer share the same screen, both Mike Finnegan and David Freiburger are still very much in motion, just no longer in the same direction. Freiburger remains the workhorse of Motor Trend's content empire. You'll still find him on Roadkill Garage, Engine Masters, and across countless Motor Trend YouTube appearances. He's still diving deep into carb tuning, gear ratios, and budget junk builds, carrying the flag for old-school gearhead knowledge and accessibility. For him, the platform has only grown. Finnegan, on the other hand, took the slower road, but on his own terms. His YouTube channel, Finnegan's Garage, has become a haven for fans who want to see the long builds, the personal shop wins, the the moments that don't fit a TV script. He's building high-horsepower monsters, experimenting with drag boats, and spending more time with his family. It's quieter, yes, but there's a clarity to it. A builder in his element. And the beauty is this: neither one is wrong. There's no villain, no fall guy. Just two car guys evolving in different ways. Freiburger continued building the Roadkill brand. Finnegan returned to building in real time. And in that divergence is something rare in today's content world: authenticity. They didn't fake a final episode. They didn't stage a dramatic last build. They simply walked their own paths, with respect. Because maybe the bromance didn't end. Maybe it just shifted gears. Ask any longtime Roadkill fan what they want most, and the answer's simple. Just one more ride. One more cross-country trip in a barely running junker. One more Finnegan smile as Freiburger mutters, "This is a terrible idea." One more glorious mess of sparks, sludge, and laughter. So, could it happen? There's reason to hope. Finnegan has said in podcasts that he holds no ill will, that he loved working on the show, but simply couldn't keep up with the schedule anymore. He's open to special episodes, guest builds, anything that fits into his life now, not the grind of before. Freiburger, too, has never spoken negatively of Finnegan. If anything, there's a quiet fondness in the way he still refers to the early Roadkill days. The chaos, the creativity, the chemistry. And then there's the audience. The thousands of fans who never stopped asking, who binge-watch old episodes just to feel that spark again, who keep the dream alive through builds inspired by Roadkill classics. The door's not locked, it's just not being knocked on. Yet. All it would take is a text, a weekend, a car too broken to ignore. Because legends don't always need reunions. But when they happen, they're magic. Finnegan and Freiburger didn't just host a car show. They changed car content forever. Before them, car media was either high-end showroom builds or overly scripted garage drama. Roadkill blew the doors off all of that. It was grimy, ridiculous, human, and it showed a generation of gearheads that failure is part of the fun, and that doing it wrong can still be doing it right. They taught us that a $1,000 junker with heart is worth more than a $100,000 show car with ego. That the bond between friends wrenching on a dream is stronger than any dyno number. And even though their on-screen partnership may be on pause or done, their impact is permanent. Every time someone straps a turbo to a car that shouldn't have it, every time a guy and his buddy drive 600 miles with no heater, 3 tools, and 1 prayer. Every time we see a car smoking and think, let's try it anyway. That's Roadkill. That's Finnegan. That's Freiburger. 2 guys, 1 legacy, and a reminder that the best builds don't need to be perfect. They just need to be real.